Good morning, everyone. We're going to give all of our other attendees about 2 more minutes to join, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks again, everyone. We're going to get started here in about 1 minute, and we're just going to wait for everyone else to join, and then we'll get started. Thanks. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. We have a pretty packed agenda today, so I'm sure more people will trickle in, but thank you for attending today. Obviously, we usually do this in person, and we weren't able to do that this year, but we're glad that you were able to join for our online webinar series. Um, Today's keynote speech is by Dr. Brandy Brown. I'm going to go through some introduction stuff and some notes, and then Brandy will go ahead and get started. So my name is Fred Seiler. I'm here at Clear Result, and we work with utilities to reduce energy load and work through different C&I, and both on the residential side as well. Today's agenda, we're going to go through some of our sponsors of the conference, some additional educational opportunities that are available to our C&I folks. And then we're going to go ahead and hand it off to Brandy Brown to do the keynote speech. And then we'll have a quick Q&A session. And if you have any questions after the presentation, you're welcome to send those either in to Brandy or to the website itself. We have a chat feature there, and we can get any questions over to Brandy Brown. A couple of housekeeping notes. All attendees are on mute, so please use the side chat bar for any questions that you have. We'll answer those at the end and take those at the end. So if you have any questions, make sure to just write them down right when you have them. And a recording of this presentation will be available afterwards, and we'll post that on the website and send it out to everyone afterwards. So a quick thank you to our sponsors. All the utilities continued to sponsor the webinar series that we did this year. So we have Consumers Energy, Semco's Energy Waste Reduction Program, Efficiency United, UPCO, and DTE. So a big thanks to all of them for continuing to sponsor this educational opportunity for everyone. And we do have another educational opportunity for the remainder of the year. Mark Jewell, who is a well-renowned speaker and presenter on the energy sector, is doing a 6-part webinar series. Those are going to be on Thursdays. They're about an hour and a half of a presentation and then a live Q&A with Mark Jewell himself. So any questions that you have about the material. That's getting started on October 8th. The first session is Prospering Despite New Constraints. This webinar is really geared towards selling during a recession or when sales are down. If you were to take the session with Mark Jewell himself, it'd be about $588, and right now we're offering that at no cost to any registered trade allies with Semco's Energy Waste Reduction Program or Efficiency United. So if you do want to register, the web link is there. If you have any questions, just reach out and we can get you that information. Again, this is at no cost to our CNI trade allies. And if you do have any questions, let us know. We can get you the information. And then finally, a piece that we're doing to reward people that attend these webinars. I know during the in-person events, there's a lot of goodies and fun things. So if you attend 2 or more of these webinars, you'll receive a 6-piece grill kit. And some of our other sponsors and partners will be including some materials in those as well. Those kits will be mailed out in mid-December when this presentation series is over. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Brandy Brown. Brandy Brown is with the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes Energy, and she's the Climate and Energy Advisor. And she has a PhD in interdisciplinary evaluation from Western Michigan University. So thank you, Dr. Brandy Brown, and go ahead.
Thanks, Frederick, for that introduction. Welcome everyone to the keynote today. I am happy to be joining you from my home in Kalamazoo, Michigan. It's a beautiful fall day, so I do hope you get some time outside in the sun whenever you get the chance. I do feel like I'm amongst friends today. I got my start in the energy sector learning about CNI programs years ago, and learned right here in Michigan from local utilities of how things worked. And my first teachers were folks in the contractor network who I got to spend some time with on ride-alongs and see how the programs worked in the commercial sector and the ag sector. And so it really, coming from an evaluation background and wanting to understand how things worked and how to make them more effective. The contractors here in Michigan were really my first teachers, and it really still hits home for me today as I'm working with the Michigan Department of Great Lakes and Energy to move our state forward on some really cool things. So I do have kind of an interesting title today for my keynote. I just threw it up there. So forgive me if if the equity term doesn't feel like it fits for us, but my goal here today is just to talk to you about how it does and why including equity in program designs just opens up the door to opportunity for energy efficiency. So some of you may have heard that the Office of Climate and Energy will be working on what's called the My Healthy Climate Plan for Michigan. Essentially what that is mapping out how we pull together our energy resources, how we pull together our business sector, our industry, and how people work and live to make sure that we're using our resources as effectively as possible and not having further negative impacts on the environment or public health. That's going to be key in the next few decades for a number of reasons. And so we are going to be working together, guided by the Governor's Council on Climate Solutions, to figure out how Michigan gets there to lead the pack, to be much stronger and better than where we are today, and getting through the current economic crisis, the current COVID crisis, everything that's before us today to come out stronger, more resilient, and ready for the future economy that's coming. We all know that there's an energy transition that we're experiencing right now, and we're seeing that transition in a lot of different areas. One piece to add into that is that we're expecting a population growth right here in Michigan in the next few decades. We're expected to be one of 3 places in the United States that is going to attract people. So if you think of us as snowbirds going to Florida, and even some of our friends in Canada going to Florida, that's going to change over the next generation, and Michigan will become a go-to destination. Blows some people's minds, but that's where we're going to go. So essentially, we need to get ready for that. And equity in that means that we want all Michiganders to be included in this planning, and efficiency is key to getting us to a carbon neutral future. Next slide, Frederick. So Focusing on climate and energy. I talked a little bit about the office being created. It was created by Governor Whitmer in 2019, early 2019, and my job in the office is to coordinate activities amongst state departments and agencies with climate response, to provide insights and recommendations to state governments and local units of government on how to mitigate the climate crisis and adapt to climate changes, as well as provide guidance and assistance for the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, advancing renewable energy, and building climate adaptation and resiliency. There's a lot there. I can tell you it's super complex, and we've been working on it. I've been working on it for a little over a year now, but I can tell you that the Office of Climate and Energy is not much different than what you've experienced with energy from the state of Michigan. So most of you have worked with our dear friend Robert Jackson, who does a just tremendous job leading the state in energy and also serving as a national treasure in national organizations for energy efficiency and other things, and has really steered the ship there for us for a long time now. He's still doing the same stuff. Our team is still doing the same energy work. The only thing new is kind of how does climate fit in here? So we did spend a good amount of time thinking about how does climate fit? How do we talk to folks about climate without getting political? How do we tell people about the things that will be impacting them in the future to make sure that they come out bigger and stronger? And then how do our existing structures fit within that? So the primary thing that I can tell you is energy efficiency is key. And you guys know this. You guys are practicing this every day. But energy efficiency is key. And we know that we can achieve about 40% of our GHG emissions reductions through energy efficiency. What does that mean? That means more projects, that means more customers, that means deeper retrofits. All of these things that the energy efficiency sector has been talking about for decades is the key to achieving some of these carbon neutrality goals in the future. So there are some good things about that. The good thing is that all of you know what those barriers are, right? We know that sometimes energy efficiency isn't seen as sexy. It isn't seen as exciting. When you talk to some people about getting new windows or insulation, they kind of, they're thinking about that price point. They're not thinking of all those benefits. When you talk to some businesses, I remember being on ride-alongs and going into some businesses, and the field staff or contractors would go out there and be talking about the benefits of, let's get you some LEDs in here. Let's do an audit to see what we can do for you. There's a lot of convincing that needs to be done for those folks who aren't sure of the benefits. And so what we want to do is figure out how we can help all of you achieve your goals and maybe expand those buckets. We know that if 40% of our goals come from energy efficiency, then we've got to do everything in our power to make sure that all of you are as effective as possible. So what does that effectiveness look like? In the C&I lens, let me pause for a second. If we're thinking about efficiency and equity, and a residential lens, I think we can all think about what that means, right? We know that our energy efficiency programs have historically served populations who could best afford things. I remember starting out in the sector and would be looking at some of the measures in the MEMD, like new insulation. In my old house, there was a time where new insulation was out of my price point as a residential customer. So I was not a traditional energy efficiency participant, right? So what does that mean? That means anyone who cannot afford these programs is not making use of them. So that's missed opportunity, that's missed savings, that's missed projects. And so flipping that to the commercial side, we can look at the commercial sector in the same way. We have a lot of businesses, especially now in this current crisis, who are having a horribly hard time, right? lots of family businesses who are trying to maybe maintain the rent, maintain the operations and maintenance of a building that possibly they own. They're having a hard time just making ends meet with this current economic crisis. Energy efficiency, we know, is a way to alleviate some of that burden. So how do we consider equity amongst the C&I group when we're doing our programs? The other thing we can think about is schools. So there's a good push. There's always been a great push, but there's a really good push to help schools out right now when it comes to air quality. And so that is something that this group knows a lot about. And we've been working internally with the state to see how we can support existing programs from our utilities to provide services, energy efficiency services to schools. The different thing that we are doing internally within the state with the air quality programs in schools is that we are communicating all of the additional benefits. So it's not just those energy efficiency benefits that schools are retaining when they have in maybe an HVAC upgrade, or getting new filters, which most of the times if we're doing a very high level filter with the HVAC system is going to mean a retrofits for some of our older school buildings. But looking at those projects and seeing what other benefits are there. So we have the energy savings, but we also have a lot of health benefits. Before COVID hit, we were looking at how do we support schools that are in areas with high outdoor emissions, because we know indoor air quality is 5 times worse than what it is outside. So if outside air is harmful to folks, then we know that the inside air in those schools is even more harmful for some of our most vulnerable folks, our students, our children. So looking at those type of programs and thinking about how do we kind of spread out the benefits and consider these health benefits. Those health benefits go a long way. Those are giving back to the community around you without even being seen. So one of the asks that I'm going to have in the upcoming year is that you guys go out there and continue telling folks what your value is, continue sharing your knowledge and saying that you're here to help schools or businesses or homes figure out these problems together. I know that I certainly don't have all the answers, but I know that if I lean on you guys, we'll get somewhere. Frederick, next slide, please. All right, so this topic of this slide, I just wanted to kind of sit with this for a minute. Carbon neutral Michigan. What is that? How does it have to do with me at all? And then why? So a few of my friends have reached out and said, hey, Brandy, why are you pushing for a carbon neutral Michigan? So what is a carbon neutral Michigan? Essentially, all of the emissions that we put into the air, into the atmosphere from our use of energy is carbon. So that's just like the basic premise. So all of that carbon does have impacts. As I just talked about, a micro scale example with an area school that's in an area with a lot of emissions in the air, and that can impact the health of the folks in that school. Those carbon emissions are impacting things. And so what I've noticed is that we're just not measuring all of the impacts. We know how awesome it is for me to get in my dad's truck and travel and haul stuff, but what are all the impacts that we're experiencing as a society based on years and generations of all that, right? So we are seeing changes, and what the state climatologist tells me is that we have some needs that we need to hit within the next decade or 2 decades in order to reduce those emissions. The aggregation of all those emissions into the atmosphere are having effects on higher frequency and ferocity of storms. What does that mean? That means more precipitation, that means more flooding, more rain, that means A lot of times that insurers, those who insure our businesses and homes, are starting to look at how much they're looking at flooding, but they're starting to look at the increased frequency of storms in different areas, and then they're adjusting our insurance rates based on that. What does that mean? That means that we're spending more money just to get by and just to live. One of the ways that we put some downward pressure on some of those financial risks is to just have a plan, to be ready, to prepare our communities for different effects of storms, for prepare communities for influx of populations, prepare communities to be more resilient to get through those things. And as you all know, energy is central to that. Energy is the key from my perspective. So that's the what. The why. The why we're doing this is, it just goes back to the resiliency. We want every community to thrive. We want every community to have the opportunities that we've had in the past. And so to get everyone healthy and understand all of these risks, this is how we're communicating, and this is why we're moving in this direction. I think it's a credit to Michigan, and it's a credit to Michigan utilities that when we were looking at what path we needed to take to move forward, that our utilities were already on this path. Our utilities were already thinking about it. Our utilities have plans already. A lot of places in the United States do not have that benefit whatsoever. They are in a maybe not so friendly relationship with their utilities, where they can't kind of come to terms on things. Here, it was, I really have to say, a blessing that our utilities are some of the front runners in thinking about how this works for Michigan. So looking at their plan and being able to not worry about that side of the picture too much and know that we have partners to help us get us there was just wonderful stepping into this position. Next slide, Frederick. So again, my kind of final point here is that energy efficiency is absolutely critical to achieving the goals that Governor Whitmer has put forward. I've told you that 40% of our goals can be achieved through energy efficiency. You guys know the hows, the whats, and the whys, so I don't need to get into all of that. But what we need to do is to make sure that there's a hard push in the next decade. That was, and I have to say, that was our thinking in January, February, even the beginning of March. Once we all started going through this current crisis, our thinking has shifted because we know how tough it is. I mean, everybody's having a really hard time. But in that, energy efficiency is still critical. We still got to figure out a way to remove barriers, to expand offerings, to understand who has not been served by energy efficiency, because that is some critical opportunity. So if it means that we are supporting communities and businesses in a very targeted fashion and finding everything that we have at the state to put behind some of these efforts, you know, we're willing to come to the table and figure that out with you all. If it means that we need to message things differently, you know, we're game for that. But energy efficiency is going to be critical in the next 10 and 20 years if we are going to make big leaps. So, you know, that's pretty much what I wanted to come here and talk to you guys today about. Everything we're planning, we are leaning on energy efficiency. We know that you guys know how to get this done. We know that you have tried and true practices to evaluate, which is my favorite thing, but evaluate what's working, what's not working, and pivot to quickly get to your goals. And that's the same approach that I'm pulling into addressing climate. So that's, I think, do I have one more slide, Frederick?
The last slide is just questions. So yeah, we can open it up to questions. Thank you again, Brandy, for that great speech. I think there was a lot of good pieces in there. If anybody has any questions, make sure to put them into the chat bar. I'll just ask, a question, or if you can expand on something. You said that I think it was interesting to say that the snowbirds might be coming to Michigan in the next, few years. Can you just expand on that and what you think that looks like in terms of both energy efficiency and what that means for the state overall?
Yeah. So few years is probably a generation, but we'll start seeing impacts on our growing season. We'll start seeing more frequent high heat index days, which, as we know, drive some of our electric peaks. And I'll have to check on how we're projected to see winter peaking change. But yeah, we are expected to be one of three spots in the continental United States that will attract what they're calling climate refugees. I don't know if that's an appropriate term, but folks are going to be moving here because we will be a key place. The other two places are, I believe, Duluth and then Seattle, Washington. Of those three places, Seattle has, they have some infrastructure there, and they're a little bit further on the path to be able to incorporate a large influx of people. Here in Michigan, as we all know, we have a lot of work to do with our infrastructure. So when I think about possibly folks coming to Michigan, I think about do we have the infrastructure to incorporate all our new neighbors? The quick thought on that is probably no, especially when we think about transportation. There's going to be some growing pains there, especially if we are considering where in Michigan people are going to move. You can think about Detroit, Grand Rapids is now a leading city. So where are folks going to move? Are they going to go to the UP? This is something that we all kind of have to guess at a little, but work together to prepare. So having good infrastructure, especially our energy infrastructure, and considering some of those reverberating impacts as we get an influx of folks in the next generation is going to be critical to making sure that we're resilient. The biggest other big thing that I didn't mention that's not so much in my wheelhouse, but I can tell you comes up a lot in discussions is jobs. If we get a lot of new neighbors, we need to make sure that we have a strong economic foundation to support them coming in and folks having enough jobs to support our communities. So that's where a lot of the clean energy talk and a lot of, when I say climate, a lot of what we're doing is clean energy. I mean, we're thinking into the future, we're watching what the utilities are doing, and we're trying to figure out what is the business growth that we need to support to move into that future. We know from experience that a strong contractor network, strong and supported contractor network is key to that growth. So we are watching that and having talks with folks around the state to make sure that they are keyed into the need to support all of our folks.
Yeah, thank you. I think what you touched on, especially with the economic standpoint, I think that'll be important and will be interesting to see how we address that moving forward, because a lot more people means a lot more jobs needed, and yeah. So it looks like we don't have any other questions. If you do have any questions, again, reach out. You can use the chat function on the Michigan Energy Conference website, or reach out to us directly. Here is the information about about EGLE. If you have any questions, make sure to reach out to them. And then, yeah, just wrapping up, we have our next speech next week, or our next webinar series next week. It'll be with Milan Klucio, and it'll be about vertical indoor farming. You can register at mienergyconference.com. Again, thank you to Dr. Brandy Brown. Thank you all for attending. If you have any questions, send them our way, but glad you could all attend. Have a good rest of your day.